Hi, my name's Chris White, and my friend Frank Lordy and I are the creators of ZeitgeistChallenge.com, where we offer you cash to prove the claims that Zeitgeist the movie makes about the similarities between Jesus and other gods in the ancient world. So before Frank and I get into analyzing this response video or book commercial from Acharya S, I'd like to offer her a chance to make some money. And that is to go to ZeitgeistChallenge.com and take the Zeitgeist Challenge. After all, if what she says is true, it should be a piece of cake. Now, Frank and I are going to detail the reasons that this video that she just put out is insulting to the intelligence not just of the people that believe what she's saying, but also to the scholars who have repeatedly asked her to produce evidence for the claims that she makes.
Over the past several months, there have been many claims on websites and in forums and videos all over the internet that the first part of Zeitgeist has been refuted or debunked. Contrary to these claims, the facts continue to demonstrate otherwise.
Note that she never tells us what these facts are.
Because of my work's influence on Part 1 of Zeitgeist, a number of the debunking sites have been directed largely at me. While we would naturally expect a debate as to the facts, the detractors, whether theists or atheists, quite often have not actually studied my work, and there has not been one refutation site to our knowledge that has proceeded from an informed and unbiased perspective, accurately presenting facts based on serious research.
I guess that she just wants us to take her word for it here, that none of the debunker sites use any facts or come from an informed perspective. To the right of this video, in the Details tab, I'm going to list every single debunker site that I can find. And look at them and notice that contrary to what she's saying, the claims have nothing to do with religious bias. They are simply pointing out that Zeitgeist makes a lot of claims about ancient history that are found nowhere in ancient history. But don't worry, Acharya is going to tell us a little later on why it is that no one can find any record of a great deal of the things that she says in ancient history.
It should be kept in mind that in this short video, I can't cover everything, but I have already written extensively on these subjects, and I have specifically addressed several important issues from Zeitgeist in my companion guide to Part 1, available online right now. Why is the information in Zeitgeist Part 1 not widely known? In the first place, because of blasphemy and heresy laws, in the not-too-distant past, people could lose their jobs, friends, families, or even lives for merely questioning Christian dogma.
And what's not mentioned here, of course, is that a good deal of people killed because of these heresy laws were Christians. Because Christians weren't allowed to own Bibles back then, and if they wanted proof, if they wanted to understand why they were subject to papal rule, if they wanted to understand how Jesus' birthday somehow became intertwined with the Saturnalia festival, and what Easter had to do with Jesus' death and resurrection, well, they were burned at the stake.
Let me jump in here and add something real quick. This is not speculation. This is a matter of record. The trial records are available. The accounts of these things are available. These people were being killed because they wouldn't do various things that the Catholic Church was telling them to do. These were Christians that wouldn't worship Mary. These were Christians that wouldn't do a lot of the various things that the Catholic Church says to do. And so they were being killed for it. That's on paper. We know why they were being killed. But Acharya is telling us this is a reason why there isn't any proof of the things that she says. She's saying that people were scared to talk about it because they would be killed. So the burden of proof is now for her to show a record of some trial where somebody was trying to prove that Horus and Jesus were the same God, or so some record of some account that somebody was killed because they were a comparative religion major. She wants us to believe this is the reason she doesn't have any evidence for the things that she says. So now, can she produce any evidence for her excuse to not have any evidence?
Also, much of this information can't be found in English, but it appears in other languages, like Greek, Latin, German, French, Sanskrit, Hebrew, and Egyptian. Unless someone can work in other languages, he or she may never encounter these facts.
She's saying that the reason that you can't actually validate the things that she says is because she got them from other languages, and apparently since we wouldn't be able to understand those languages, she's just going to avoid referencing where she got it altogether.
Because of these situations and others, including deliberate censorship by vested interests, Many of these parallels between Christ and other gods and goddesses of the ancient world cannot be found in encyclopedia entries, and these seem to be where most of the debunkers are getting their information from.
The following is a list of 10 encyclopedias and dictionaries, places Acharya S. claims you cannot look for validation of the claims she makes in her Zeitgeist Companion Guide, yet she herself cites on this website, which is the book's bibliography page.
As well as from Christian apologists, whose biases are obvious and well known.
Funny that Christian biases should be brought up, especially when denoted as well known or obvious. You see, Acharya S.'s biases are not well known or obvious, yet easily provable. Acharya's bibliography cites Wallace Budge, and cites him about 20 times. Within the Zeitgeist Companion's Guide text, Wallace Budge is cited in footnote form about 40 times. 40 citations from one author in only 50 pages. In those 50 pages, we are counting the cover and table of contents. The question is Budge a reliable source? Well, one footnote in the text says the following: I am aware of the debate concerning Dr. Budge's work, a controversy that some have suggested represents a form of rivalry, not uncommon in the academic world or in the world at large. I personally have found nothing egregious about his discussion of the Egyptian religion in English, although I cannot vouch for everything in his hieroglyphic dictionaries, for instance, which are considered outdated in their system of transliteration, but which nevertheless appear to be sound overall. So this is a guy who's cited 40-some-odd times in the Zeitgeist 50-page companion guide, and Acharya S. already is debunking the fact that she's quoting this guy and citing this guy because she knows his transliteration. In other words, his translations are outdated.
Now that being said, you don't need an encyclopedia to debunk Acharya S. All you have to do is read the accounts yourself of the ancient gods, and then read what she says about those ancient accounts, and notice the differences. And you're like, wow, nobody got crucified or resurrected after 3 days in what I just read. I wonder which version you're reading.
And reading encyclopedia entries does not make an expert out of anyone. In addition, these days, many scholars are so specialized they don't cover the broad array of subjects involved in this particular field of research. Scholars in past eras were less specialized, and they did in fact make these connections within comparative religion, as my research demonstrates.
The reason Acharya includes this is because experts and professors and scholars that focus on the particular fields, like somebody that would be an expert in, say, Buddhism, like Professor Chung Feng Yu, who says of Acharya S., she says, the woman you speak of is totally ignorant of Buddhism. It is very dangerous to spread misinformation like this. You should not honor her by engaging in a discussion. Please ask her to take a basic course in world religion or Buddhism before uttering another word about things she does not know. The same thing with a professor focusing on Krishna says of Acharya S.'s take on Krishna that it is complete and utter nonsense. I've heard Mithraic scholars say that if Acharya S. knows of Mithraic scriptures, that she needs to report it to the Mithraic foundations and so on. Same thing with Egyptologists. You can't find anybody that says Horus was crucified. But again, Acharya just says the reason that the experts even don't agree with her is because they're not looking at everything as a whole. But you have to ask yourself, how does looking at everything as a whole tell you anything about what the ancient Egyptians said specifically about Horus? They either did or did not say that Horus was crucified. It's just another excuse to explain away why there's no evidence of what she said.
Furthermore, some of these parallels between Jesus and the other gods represent mysteries in the ancient world that were not to be divulged to the masses. In fact, people were killed for revealing these secrets, such that these mysteries were not readily recorded. Nevertheless, with painstaking research and piecing together, we can present a solid case for all of the important parallels.
Here she's saying that another reason that you can't find any record of what she says is because they were part of the mysteries and therefore not written down. She insinuates that despite the lack of evidence, she can make a strong case, but she gives us no indication what that case has to do with.
In my investigation of the Horus-Jesus parallels for my companion guide,
I slowed the tape down about halfway in the next little bit so you can go through her primary sources that I think were intended just to blow right past you, so it just looks like, wow, look at all the pre-Christian primary sources she has. But I think you'll notice there's not a whole lot of dates in there that are much past the 1800s, and I don't think that qualifies as pre-Christian and certainly not a primary source.
I incorporate many pre-Christian primary sources, as well as the works of scholars highly credentialed in the appropriate fields. The other correspondences found in Zeitgeist can likewise be backed up with either primary sources or the works of highly credentialed scholars. For example, the parallels between Christ and the god Attis.
Okay, this is it. This is why we all came here. Acharya is going to get into the specifics about these gods. She's going to show us where the primary sources are. She's going to prove the debunkers wrong. Let's see what she's got to say.
Who was brought up in Zeitgeist are discussed by Dr. Andrew T. Fear, a professor of classics and ancient history at the University of Manchester in England. In his article, Sibyl and Christ, Dr. Fear tells us that Attis was killed and then raised from the dead 3 days later, during a celebration that depicted him being resurrected out of a tomb, basically at Easter time, precisely as was said of Christ.
Considering that in this whole movie, Acharya S. only addresses what you just heard about Attis and what you're about to hear about Krishna, and that's it, you would expect it to be her A material. But these things not only didn't happen, it was her best chance for them to happen. First, you need to know just a little bit of background, and that is that, like Mithra, Attis existed on paper before the time of Jesus. However, neither one of them became a part of the Roman mystery religions until after the time of Jesus. And that's when the writings started to have anything at all close to Christianity. So what I'm saying is that they had a really good chance of being similar to the stories of Jesus because they were influenced by Christianity. Even the person that Acharya S. is quoting here, A.T. Fear, knows this very, very well. He says that the Attis cult modified itself in significant ways with the passing of years, and says that they seem to have been provoked by a need to respond to the challenge of Christianity. So, like Mithra's, Attis represents the very best chance that Acharya S. can be right about these similarities. And what makes this so sad is that she is still wrong. There are several versions of Attis's death, but in none of those accounts is he resurrected after 3 days. In the closest possible account during Attis's wedding, his bride dies and he basically emasculates himself. One of his friends asks Zeus if he could basically resuscitate him, and Zeus consents only in the sense that he lets Attis's body remain uncorrupted, his hair continues to grow, and his little finger moves continuously. No 3 days, no tomb, no nothing. And in another account, Sibyl falls in love with Attis, who prefers a nymph. Sibyl kills the nymph. Attis goes nuts and emasculates himself. From his blood, flowers grow out of the ground, and he turns into a pine tree. There's another story where a king kills Attis and makes sure his body is never found. And keep in mind, these are after the time of Christ. And yet it still takes another 100 or 200 years in the 3rd century before anything like what Acharya S. is saying, at which point it becomes obvious that it was Christianity that influenced Attis, not the other way around. Which, by the way, is what the guy that she's quoting, A.T. Fierce, says point blank.
Also, the idea of the Indian god Krishna's mother being a virgin is not widely known and is therefore said to be wrong. First of all, the virgin birth motif is specifically stated by ancient writers like Philo of Alexandria to be a mystery.
Keep in mind, this is one of the 2 things that she says in this whole video about these similarities. This is supposed to answer the debunkers, and she gives us this and the Attis thing. And listen to what she wants you to believe. She's telling you that the reason that you can't find any record in like the Bhagavad Gita or the Mahabharata that Krishna was born of a virgin is because it was